I was an AccuQuilt international educator. I taught AccuQuilt all throughout the United States and Canada. Well, one of my most popular demos was how to cut bias binding. So this demo, if you have AccuQuilt, you can use the 2.5-inch strip cutter. If you don't have AccuQuilt, you can use a rotary cutter and a ruler. So tonight I'm doing the rotary cutter and a ruler method. You take yardage of fabric and you cut a strip. I'm going to back up so you can see this. So here is some Andover fabric. There's a selvage, and there's the other selvage. You want to cut an 18-inch strip of fabric so you have selvages on the long ends. Okay, so this measures 18 by 44 inches. Then I'm going to point the camera down so you can see what I'm doing here. So then what you want to do, you want to trim off. You want to trim the selvages off, okay? So all I'm going to do, oops, where's that? There it is. Rotary cutter, where are you? I'm going to trim the selvages off of both ends. And you notice I've got striped fabric. Well, let me tell you something. In my humble opinion, striped fabric makes some of the most beautiful bias binding you can make. Because when you do it, it will put the stripes at a 45-degree angle to your quilt. So I'm just going to trim off the selvage. Guess what? I don't throw these away because you can find all kinds of fun things to do with fabric selvages. I can't even talk tonight. So I just trim both of my selvages off, easy peasy. And now, here's where the magic happens. So as you can see, I have basically a 42 by 18-inch piece of fabric now with the selvages cut off. Just think of it as a giant strip that you're going to cut across the selvages off of fabric that comes off the bolt, an 18-inch strip of fabric. Now we're going to fold it towards me. So this corner up here, let's see here, right here, I'm going to bring it down and fold it, okay? And then I'm going to just finger press it. I really like to do this at an ironing board so I can just lightly press that down. And then I'm going to go to the other end, right here, and I'm going to take the bottom corner and fold it up and away from me. Okay? Right there like so. Anyway, so now what I have, let me grab this camera on the stand. I'm going to try to get you a better image of it. You can see how I have that folded, right? There's one corner that went down and up. This one came up and folded down. Now, I'm going to rotate this fabric. I'll pick it back up after I get it moved so you can see what I've done here. That's step one. And now I am going to put this fold line, just so you know where that fold is, that is your bias line in the fabric. But now I'm going to fold the two folds up towards each other like this, and I'll move my camera so you can get a much better look at this. And here, once again, if I was at my iron, I would just lightly press everything down. Check it out. So I just folded that up like so. Okay? So these two fold lines meet up here at the top. So there's my fabric. And what I've got right now, I have folded it into a parallelogram. Now I'm going to fold in both ends towards the middle, and it'll kind of look like I have folded an envelope. Let me try this camera angle. Here we go. So I'm going to take this one, I'm just going to fold it towards the center. like so. At the iron, press, press, press. Then I'll take this other end here, and I'm just going to fold it towards the center until the 2 points meet. Okay? Right there. Iron, press, press, press. Now, all I have to do is cut my 2.5 inch strips. There we go. You can see that. So, down here, right up here, I'm going to put this up to the top. Let me move that camera a little bit more down. There we go. There we go. Okay. And over this way some, I think. And back a little more. There we go. There we go. Okay. So now I'm just going to cut. I'm going to trim this. This is going to be my wastage. It's not really wastage. I save all of this stuff. And if you had AccuQuilt, you would lay this as it's folded right onto the AccuQuilt 2.5 inch strip cutter and run it through the machine. And in one pass, it does everything that I'm now doing with a rotary cutter and a ruler. So now I cut my binding strips at 2.5 inch widths. So I'm going to move this down. And I'm lining that edge, that line I just cut up with the 2.5 inch mark. And then I'm just going to cut it. Now the great thing about this method, when you do this, check this out. It automatically cuts your 45-degree angles to sew your strips together with. So it's already got all the miters cut, easy peasy. Once I get done cutting, I'm going to go over here to the Altair and I'm going to sew all of these together. And I'm going to get another cut, 2.5, 2.5. We're going to give that a trim. Okay. And we'll do it one more time. 2.5, 2.5. Trimmy, trim, trim. And then if I needed it, I could trim this some more, but I probably won't need that. But it's always there if I do. And now I have just cut all my strips for a 60 by 70 inch quilt. And all I have left to do is to sew them together, press my strips in half, and then attach it to my quilt. So let's go over here to the Altair. Okay. And I'm going to use quilt stitch number Q-01. That is the piecing stitch middle needle position. Now all I'm going to do is take those strips that I just cut and I'm going to match the angles together and sew my strips together. Check this out here. So right there. And then I'm just going to overlap them like this. Right there. And then where this makes a little V right here, that's where I want my needle to enter. So I'm going to line that laser light right up on the valley, the low part of that valley of that V, line it up with my needle, and then when I exit, it'll come out at the peak of the next valley down here. So wherever those two fabrics crisscross, you get that V shape. At the top, it looks like a V. At the bottom, it looks like an inverted V. That's where you want your needle entry and needle exit to happen. Because when that happens, I'm going to sew this down. You will get a perfect mitered strip. You can also use this technique to make longer strips for borders. Okay, so check it out. There's the seam. Now I used a contrasting thread so it could be seen easier on camera. In the real world for this fabric, I would probably use a dove gray. But when I open it up, check it out how nice and straight that strip is. When I go to press it, I'm going to go and I'm going to press by strips and press all of these seams open. Okay? All of those seams to be pressed open. And then they would get pressed in half like so. Right there like that. Then I will line up this raw edge with the raw edge of my quilt after I have trimmed it, and I will attach this to the back side of the quilt. Because then when I flip it to the front, all I have to do is straight stitch that down and I have beautiful, yummy quilt binding. And I can tell you, let me fold a longer piece of this, you can see how cool the stripes are. This particular stripe is an Andover fabric, and it is called Solstice. And it's an amethyst color, but look at how cool that binding will look when it is finished. There we go. All the stripes are at a 45-degree angle. One of my favorite techniques, when I always hand sewn binding down, it was my least favorite task in quilt making to do. But now that I do it all on the machine, I actually enjoy doing binding now. So yay. It's a good thing. I'll tell you, I did the other method of cutting bias binding like my Meemaw taught me. And that was that you take a yard of fabric and you cut large triangles out of it. Sew the triangles together so they formed a strip. Sew that strip into a tube. Mark it with a pencil and a yardstick to cut out continuous bias binding. Well, I can tell you, my method is faster and way easier than that method is. So that's the only way that I make and cut bias binding anymore. If you'll just see where those V's happen, when you layer this seam, right there is where I started sewing, was right here. Right here. See how it makes that V like a valley? So right there is where you want your needle to enter. And when you get to the bottom, it makes another valley, but an upside down valley. And that where those lines intersect is where you want your needle to exit that seam. You will get perfect mitered seams each and every time with this method. Nice straight edges.